Welcome back, 1570 AM, Baltimore Positive WNST. My next guest is Nestor J. Aparicio. Nestor, welcome in.
Happy pre-draft weekend to you, Dennis. In the old days, this was the draft weekend. I remember going back when like Ray Lewis and John Ogden were drafted on April 19th. They've moved everything back. The Super Bowl's back, the Combine's back, the schedule's back, and now they will own next weekend. So it gives us another week here to, I don't know, deal off Deebo Samuel or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. All the stories keep churning, keep coming out. Just when you think it's safe to go back in the water, pops up another dorsal fin and the name of a story, right? Another great storyline. Of course, Ravens fans, hey, what do we have to do to get Deebo Samuel? Every time somebody becomes available, although we have no money to spend, Ravens Nation wants the latest and greatest toy for Lamar Jackson.
They went crazy cutting Miles Boykin, right? Like trying to save a couple $1,000,000
I know.
for a guy they weren't going to use. And people are like, why'd they cut him now? I'm like, maybe they weren't going to use him.
They haven't used him the past 3 years, so there's no indication that this year is going to be any different. Interestingly enough, of course, the Steelers picked him up. We'll see if they can make something out of him. He certainly didn't develop here in Baltimore during his tenure.
Well, I remember the Houston owner got in trouble, and he probably was deep down a racist based on some of the things his kid has said, but said something about inmates running the asylum, right, in sports, right? That was always sort of a catchphrase for we don't let the players pick the teams, right? And they don't even let the coaches pick the teams, right? I mean, Parcells was going grocery shopping. I don't get to pick the groceries, right? He didn't go to Wise Markets, though, apparently, but
he should have.
The NBA has, especially for that garlic chicken, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
The NBA had a problem with this, right? In the NFL, over the course of time, I remember when Emmitt Smith held out on Jerry Jones, created all sorts of havoc for the Cowboys back in probably the early 90s, late 80s, what it was, right? I remember Eli Manning telling the San Diego Chargers he wasn't going to play there. I remember John Elway telling Mr. Ursay that he wasn't going to come to Balmer to play. But the modern era where, if you're a wide receiver or you're a cornerback, you're Jalen Ramsey, you want out of Jacksonville, like the list is getting really long as to people who have done what my cousin did in Chicago. The way Louis got out of Chicago was to make himself such a pain in the ass to Bill Veeck that he had to be dealt. And that was how you got dealt in the 50s and 60s, is you made yourself uppity, whatever that would mean back in the day, if you were Hispanic or if you had a different skin tone. In the modern era, it's just fans sort of are okay with this, right? Like the tables have turned. So maybe Bisciotti's in more trouble than we think from an ownership standpoint, that Lamar Jackson can just say, I don't want to be here. I want to play for the Dolphins, or, whatever he wants to say, right?
I read a Mark Cuban quote recently that said something to the effect of, you better treat your employees real well, right? And that doesn't guarantee you that these Deebo Samuel situations aren't going to happen, but you better have a great relationship with your players. But I don't know how you make it better when money's involved. Deebo Samuel has seen some of these huge contracts, latest one by Stephon Diggs. He wants a big contract, right? And you can't blame him. He busts his tail. He's a hybrid running back, wide receiver. He's the heart and soul of that San Francisco 49ers offense. And he is grossly underpaid when you compare him to other players at his position.
Well, right. And they have a system for this. So that's why they do the Players Association. That's why they fought 6 years ago to get the cap together. And the guys playing this system, and it's not fair. I mean, like, there's no guaranteed money. I don't know if the baseball system's better. We've got sort of the wide spectrum where the baseball things are guaranteed and shouldn't have been, going back to Matt Young or, back to Bobby Bonilla, who's still getting paid 20 years later.
Yeah.
But in the case of football, the salary cap was set up. The draft is set up. These guys have the 4 or 5 years based on where they're drafted and where they are. And then there was the poison pill, is this, we're going to have a transition tag. We're going to have a franchise tag. Like, those were all things set up that the NFL didn't have what Major League Baseball had happen, which is his players, and the NBA, where, I mean, the league's unrecognizable every 2 to 3 years because star players don't stay where they are. So I don't know that is that it's fair. I don't think it's a fair system. I don't think the draft is fair. We can get into that all week long as to what kind of a modern, do they run a draft at Coonsford? You know what I mean? Do they run a draft in my industry? So it is a closed business. I guess for that's where Congress gets involved in dealing with Daniel Snyder. But I could see where in year 2, 3, and 4, if you're not redoing deals in the NFL, you're going to lose players. And if they don't lose them now, they'll lose them later. In the old world, he would just play out his contract and either get franchised for $24 million, or he would say, I'll do free agency and the Raiders will go give me money, because that's what would happen.
Who really gets a short end of the stick in the draft are running backs. They have a lot of carries in college. They come to the pros at 22, 23 years old. They sign a 4-year contract. By the time the big contract comes around, I mean, they have so much wear and tear, and now you're asking them to play 17 regular season games. I've been a proponent for different pay scale for running backs for the last decade or so, and I'm surprised that nobody has really championed their cause, because you talk about a position that gets the short end of the stick. It's an NFL running back, because you've got to be crazy these days as an NFL GM to extend a running back beyond the rookie contract.
Yeah, 28-year-old running back's over, right? I mean, just go ask Ray Rice when
right?
he had
But
his
again,
problems, right?
But you're playing on a rookie deal all those years, Ness.
Well, J.K. Dobbins a great example, right? Comes in, has a great year, overlooked in the draft. His value probably could have been higher had he not been a running back. He comes in, gets his bonus, goes out, earns a job, and then rips his knee up. May never be the same again. We never know, right? You literally never know. But in the case of running backs, they have no advocacy, right?
Correct.
There's no running backs union.
Zero. And J.K. Dobbins, look, he can be the second coming in this year, next year, and I still wouldn't give him another contract because of the wear and tear on his body, the accumulation of carries, the length of the season, and the fact that I can get a decent running back in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round in any draft.
Well, and they've been working out running backs too, right? I mean, there's very little doubt they're going to take a running back, one of these 4th round picks, right? Like one of these picks between 75 and 110, they're going to find the guy they want, and they're going to land another one because 3 wasn't enough last year, not to mention the quarterback, right?
That is correct. And again, the extra games, and if you get into the postseason, and if you happen to reach the Super Bowl, what is it, a 20-game season? That's insane. I played running back in high school and college, and 10 games, right? By game 5, I was one big bruise. The bottom of my feet hurt. Everything hurt. You're just one big bruise. So I can't see 17, 20 games in one season. That's insane.
I used to sit at the locker at the end and watch Ernest Biner, who was well into his 30s. He was the first running back that I really got to know. He's a beautiful, elegant man, wonderful man, Ernest Biner. And I remember seeing him sitting in the corner, and it was like something out of my dad's old football journals, just being beaten up at the end of his career. And then they brought in Terry Allen and, seeing what happened to Jamal, and that Jamal might not be as well. Every time I talk to Jamal, I ask him how he's doing, right? Because of the hits that he took. And I sat on Earl Campbell's lap, famously. I sent you that picture, the Tyler Rose. So, yeah, maybe this is where we take that into Lamar, right? Because Lamar has lived his life as a running back. He won't want to hear that, but he has.
Yeah, and Lamar has to get paid. And I saw Calais Campbell's quote the other day that Lamar feels like he has to prove something before he gets that contract. I think he's proven enough. And this is, again, a young man who needs better support, a better group around him to secure his future.
Well, what's a fair contract for him now, Den? I mean, you like the kid. I like the kid. I haven't talked to the kid in 2.5 years, although I did upset him when I asked him if running the ball 21 times in a football game was too much. That was the question. That was my contribution to the Ravens season. I think they're going to ban my press pass for that. But Lamar Jackson runs like a running back, takes the abuse of a running back to some degree, and never got hurt. And then last year, the end. I don't know that any responsible franchise could go giving him $150 million in guaranteed money. And that's 150. That's not 230 which is where the new bar is. So all of that consternation down in Palm Beach with Bisciotti being so upset that he couldn't even talk to me. That's how upset he was. That giving $230 million to a quarterback that his colleague has done that for a lesser talent, a lesser accomplished player,
Right.
that this and the lack of sophistication that Lamar would have about contracts in general. Same lack of sophistication you and I would have about negotiating the NFL contract for $230 million and who's in his ear and why they're in his ear. This could be incendiary for the Ravens. I mean, just if he's unhappy, like Deebo Samuel's unhappy, who will give me 250? Well, the Colts will do it. Oh, well, come on over. Let's get 3 number 1 draft picks. That's where this is going. And the general managers are emboldened by this because of the Rams giving their draft picks away. I don't know if the Ravens are ever going to think like that, but I don't know that they're going to give Lamar Jackson $200 million of guaranteed money.
No.
I find that to be far-fetched for all the reasons you just pointed out. Because I think when the door's shut, they're going to say, we love the kid. How's he going to play when he's 28 or 29 if he can't run as well? If he's just a good runner, or if he's a frightened runner, or if we don't have the kind of team that can run, then what is he going to be as a $50 million guaranteed quarterback 3, 4, 5 years from now? Because he's not a passer. Some days he can be, but he's not an accomplished passer. And to expect him to be that guy, I think you're wishing for something that you're consistently not going to get, because it's not what they practice. It's not what they want to do. They don't want to throw the football. And I've said that all along. So giving $50 million to a quarterback who doesn't want to throw the football, and also knowing that you have to have every part right, I don't know. If I were the Ravens on the inside, I'd be doing what they're doing, which is, hey, we haven't heard from Lamar. We offered him a big deal. It's time to pay. It's time to play now. Like, we're getting up on it's time to play now. And this Deebo Samuel thing and all of these players being that discontent is a tweet away, right? Like, player discontent. A couple weeks ago, things are fine for the 49ers. They'll figure it out. Now, all of a sudden, they've got a brush fire 5 days before the draft, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's unhappy. By all indications, he's very happy. He wants to be a Raven for life. His market value today, Ness, is according to Sport Track, $46.5 million a year. That's what it is. It's not more than what Deshaun Watson's contract, but that's what the numbers say it is.
I don't think the Ravens would dispute that number, by the way.
Yeah,
I think the Ravens would give him $45 million a year, no problem. I don't think the Ravens are going to pay him for 2029 right now.
Yeah, look, it's a story yet to be written, but hey, let's see what Greg Roman can do with the offense this year. If he doesn't move it forward, he'll be looking for a new job. I'm convinced about that. They just refreshed in the defense. They were stale a bit under Wink Martindale. They have new blood with Mike McDonald, and let's see what Roman does this year. The passing offense has got to take the next step, and he may be part of the problem. How can you judge
Roman for last year? Like, if I were Harbaugh, I would say to you, we didn't have any players. I mean, like, I keep going back to that I'm telling you, the one conversation I've had in the real world with John Harbaugh, where he and I walked up to each other and spoke, and I was not in a good mood at that moment. But when we spoke, all he could speak about was sort of the shame of the 6 losses, the fact that the year crashed and burned, how disappointing, like all of that. And the injury, like, I can't judge Roman based on last year, based on him running around with a backup quarterback that they never wanted to put on the field. And that was half of their year. I think the issue with Lamar isn't going to be playing now. It's going to be, if you wish success upon him, right? If this team does well and is 13-4 and plays a couple of weeks and they don't go to the Super Bowl, and Lamar establishes himself as Lamar, right? Like, it's what we know him to be, winning games, giving you a chance to win all the time, staying healthy. There still is are the Ravens going to give him $250 million of guaranteed money or whatever, that outrageous amount, not the $80 million that they've already offered him, that may have made it to 90 or 100 had he come back with an agent and negotiated, because that's where this thing was going. But what happened a month ago with Cleveland has changed probably who's in his ear, or what they're saying, or whoever's been in Lamar's ear. He doesn't have an agent, but he's got.
Oh, he has people
around
like
him.
I mean,
he has
got
advisors.
Smart people. He has to have smart people around him. But Look, it's going to be interesting. Joe Flacco caught lightning in a bottle in 2012. I hope a decade later, Lamar Jackson does the same. It'd be a wonderful situation should the Ravens win the Super Bowl. And at that point, I think he can name his contract, and I think the Ravens would be happy to pay it no matter what.
Well, yeah, but between here and there, you can't have him disgruntled,
I don't think
and
it's just,
he's going to be unsigned. My point is, the
there's
point
no
where he's
indication
going to be
disgruntled.
signed is the point where the Ravens leverage everything to give him guaranteed money
Right.
now that the Browns have done what they've done. I didn't even think about it in the early part, and then hearing Bisciotti's statements down in Palm Beach where I was locked out, like there was no follow-up on any of, like, I don't know what the follow-ups were with Bisciotti on any of this stuff, or even what his body language was like when all this was brought up. But a month out, I start to think about the real difficulty they're going to have to get a deal done with him. I just.
But you're missing one thing, though. There's no indication he's disgruntled. There's zero. There's no indication
Not yet
that he's not happy. Well, he may never be.
Well, if he wanted the money, they'd give him $100 million right now. Like, they literally, if he just was looking for the big check, they would make that happen in a heartbeat.
He's a unicorn. You'll
probably
see.
at his number, right? But if his number was $230 million, Steve would say, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there comes a point where Steve Bisciotti's running this show for this, for sure. And the leveraging of the franchise, especially what the Browns have done, which has put themselves in last place for a long, long time, if this kid doesn't walk on water. If Deshaun Watson doesn't go there and walk on water, they are in the worst contract in the history of professional sport. Worse even than Chris Davis.
No, absolutely, easily. Just the money difference alone is absurd. But hey, that's why they're the Browns, and thankfully they are in our division, and they keep browning. The Browns will brown, and hopefully the Bengals at some point will regress a bit too under Mike Brown's tenure, as they've been prone to do. So we'll see what happens.
I'm not making a case to not sign Lamar. I want to make that clear. I'm making the case that is a very difficult divide right now to be thinking that it's going to get done now. And much like you mentioned Flacco, much like the Flacco thing, when you're rooting for Lamar, understand that if anything good happens this year, really good happens this year, and that's possible, maybe even likely, you'd say, right, that it's going to be a very, very costly contract for them in a way that when Joe Flacco got all the money, all of a sudden we didn't have a center anymore. All of a sudden we didn't have wide receivers anymore.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden we didn't have Ray Lewis anymore. And when you go giving a player that kind of money, good luck. Good luck for Deshaun Watson having somebody
this is a player
to block for him and the ball to throw to and to run the football.
But this is also a player that we've seen can also carry a team, a decimated team without an offensive line, without running backs. I mean, they were 8-3 on the strength of his talent, and they knew it, right? He's that kind of a quarterback, and if he doesn't get hurt, they definitely make the playoffs, and perhaps we're singing a little bit different tune these days, but it is what it is, Ness.
I keep going to owner Koulatsos and say, all right, he comes in and puts his feet up on your desk. What's going to be a deal you can live with? That's a rational deal. Not what Cleveland did. Something that's rational for them. And I don't know that the Ravens move off of rational quickly because of what Yabos in Cleveland did. If DeCosta offered him $82 million in guaranteed money, I would think that, maybe he could see 85 or 90, but we're not moving to $180. And
I think
that's probably going to stop the Ravens from signing him, but probably create a situation where they have to franchise him. And that's where you get a mess, like, quite frankly, I think.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford just got an extension, and I think it was for 40 a year or something like it, but it wasn't it wasn't the type of numbers that Deshaun Watson got. So here's a guy that just won a Super Bowl. So I do think you use maybe the Stafford contract as a basis for your negotiation versus.
That's what you want to use. He wants to use Deshaun Watson.
Okay, so but maybe there's a happy medium between a Watson deal and a Stafford deal. But there is a way that they're going to put this together because both sides want to keep this together. Lamar wants to retire a Raven. They want him to retire a Raven. Lamar wants to win multiple Super Bowls right here in Baltimore. So you have a great foundation to put a great deal together at some point.
What kind of player do you think he's going to be when he's 30? I mean, we just universally denigrated running backs, right? What kind of player do you think Lamar Jackson's going to be at 30? What's the value is he going to have?
Given the fact that quarterbacks now can play into the 40s, and given the fact he does have a lively arm, if they can shore up that offensive line, and get him some wide receivers, I think he could be a very good quarterback. We saw him pass the daylights out of the ball prior to and leading up to the bye of this past season. So yeah, I think he can be in the upper echelon of the league in terms of passing, not just running. So I'm confident in his ability as a leader, as a competitor, and also as a passer.
Well, I say he came out in 18, right? That was the year he
Yeah.
came out. So we're now into 22, and we're talking about paying him for 25, 26, 27. And I'm asking out loud what kind of player he'll be then, because that's the player you're buying. And that's the player that Cincinnati's going to buy for Joe Burrow. That's the player that the Colts invested in Peyton Manning and all of the history of Matt Ryan in Atlanta for 15 years, for 13 years, however long it was. That whatever that is, that's what the Ravens have to be thinking about. And, I like Lamar. I want to see him do well, but this is not a traditional thing at all, especially given tread on tires for him being injured and where they are and how they felt about injured players specifically this offseason. So I would say Lamar's health this year is going to dictate so much of his value moving forward and as to what they be willing to do now that he hasn't taken the initial 80 million, because he's going to get that anyway. You're right. I mean, I don't think it's good business for him to sign a deal. I don't know where good business is. I guess that's what I'm asking. I don't know where the common sense in the middle can be here, other than play for what you're playing for right now, which everybody seems to be, to your point, happy with. He's not disgruntled.
But you talk about Joe Burrow. He had a significant injury in his freshman year, in his rookie season. He tore his ACL. In 2 years, he's had a more significant injury than Lamar Jackson has had in 4. So to
He
me,
also came a minute and 6 seconds away from winning the Super Bowl.
okay, I get that, but so did Dan Marino back in the day. He never went back. So if we want to make that comparison, so this is why we watch.
And he wasn't worth the money either.
Yeah, he wasn't. That's for sure. But Ness, as always, I appreciate your time, and it's a lot of fun talking football with
Well,
you.
if you don't win the Super Bowl, you're not worth the money.
You're really not. I mean,
The
that's
Falcons wasted all that money on Matt Ryan down
that's
there.
how I
right?
rank my quarterbacks. People don't want to hear it, but to me, it's how many rings do you have? That's why you got to put Brady up there, and then Montana, Bradshaw, Aikman, and it goes on in
Right
that
next
order.
to Stafford.
Stafford's got one. So Stafford's got one. He's got as many as Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. So let's not go there. But it's always a lot of fun.
We'll see you next week, and we'll be ready for the draft. I know it's your favorite thing in the world to do, and
can't wait.
We pushed it off a week. You know, the schedule's my favorite thing, so we're a few weeks out on that. But I'm going to enjoy draft weekend next weekend, and the Ravens have so many needs, lots of high picks. It's a fun week. It's a super fun week if you love the draft this year for the Ravens, because it's more fun this year than most years.
Absolutely, Nestor. As always, I appreciate your time. Keep doing great things.
Don't draft a running back.
4th round, he's coming for sure. With that, we'll take our next break here. 1570 AM Baltimore Positive WNST. We'll be back right after this.